Hi, I'm Patrycja from University of Rzeszów, and today I would like to talk to you about the tender power of moss. A human is always more than an individual. A patch of moss is always more than a patch of moss. Martin Heidegger's notion of being with is an exclusively human property. Humans alone can be attuned to their world, that vast, complex system of interrelatedness with other beings. For Heidegger, if I am to be fully attuned, fully authentic, then I must confront the stark reality of my own death. In facing death, I learn something of who I am, of my place in this world, and I learn it in my own most being. No one can do this on my behalf. The notion that a human being is an isolated being in any sense sounds increasingly unconvincing in the face of current science and philosophy. Humanity, it seems, is becoming ever more attuned to networks, to communities, to the complex interlinking and intermeshing all forms of life. Working with mosses, I would like to stretch Heidegger's notion of death beyond the individual. Today, we are opening up to the idea that we have never been an isolated species, that we have always already been with others. In biology, this relationality is known as symbiosis. It means literally being with. And although it has a pedigree almost as old as the Darwinian notion of competition, only in recent decades has the notion of symbiosis, cooperation, being with, gained traction. I will now take a closer look at this oldest of land plants, the moss, and see how it can help rewrite Heidegger's notion of being with. For Heidegger, my capacity to face my mortality raises me as a human above plants. Plants merely perish. They have no awareness of their impending death. This has been in tune of Western philosophy since Plato and Aristotle, who trained us to view humans as rising above other beings due to the possession of logos. Darwin complemented this vision because he argued that species have been developing from the less complex to more complex beings, which increased their chances of survival. What then about mosses? The most primitive of land plants that managed to survive for more than 350 million years? This is the question that Jeff Vandermeer and Elizabeth Gilbert have explored in their novels. Elizabeth Gilbert's The Signature of All Things is set in the 19th century, when the idea of cooperation and being with was still largely unacknowledged. Alma, the main heroine, has studied mosses for most of her life. She discovers what makes life on Earth go forward when she has a near-death experience during a tribal beach fight in Tahiti. She learns by experience that the strongest individuals of a species, herself included, have learned to use violence to survive. So she discovers, in parallel with Darwin, how evolution progresses by promoting the strongest individuals. And yet, she hesitates to publish her discovery because in this theory there is no room for sacrifice and care towards others. That care is something she finds and experiences in her immediate surroundings. Since in the plant world, your access to light, to water, is vital for survival, then mosses should surely be at a competitional disadvantage. That is what you would expect. They have no roots to draw water from the ground, no vascular system to transport it to their leaves, nothing to hold the weight of the stem. They cannot compete. They need to remain small and close to the surface. They have no flowers, no fruits, seeds, xylem, phloem, epiderma, and so on. And yet, they are the longest surviving plant species that has formed complex, intimate relationships with fellow mosses, with other plants, fungi, invertebrates, mammals, humans, water, and air. Cooperation is necessary for their survival. Competition is not an option. And so they help plants maintain moisture. They offer cushioning to birds, squirrels, humans, and bears. They purify water, they insulate nests, they offer camouflage against predators, they provide home to invertebrates. They are integral to the health of the forest. Still, they live at the mercy of rain, and when the days get dry, enter a static state of suspension of all activity for an indefinite amount of time. No moss can do it alone. When they get dehydrated, they hover at the border of life and death, an ability which still bewilders human understanding. Enter Jeff Vandermeer. Dead Astronauts presents a post-apocalyptic reality in which life as we know it has become a broken memory. The remnants of the company, which stands for capitalistic exploitation in the novel, are the focal point in every city the three eponymous characters enter in an attempt to save it. One of the three astronauts, she's called the Moss, she puts forward tidal pool rules for survival.
Stay still, be small, bring the right camouflage, know good hiding places, become a symbiote or a parasite, be poisonous or venomous, be able to regenerate body parts. If you want to survive, reduce all motion to zero over long stretches of time. Trust the current. The current. The current. The species already there, how at high tide the water rippled across all of the tidal pools, even those that had been inviolate, their own tiny kingdoms before. Be tiny, be motionless, take your time.
These rules are not a metaphorical figure, but a description of moss physiology. Being unable to run from a predator, stillness is a weapon rather than weakness. For mosses, stillness is a stronger weapon than motion. Likewise, busy activity does not make a better world. In fact, busy activity is what has brought about the apocalypse. In Vandermeer's world, you are confronted with mortality in stark terms. The narrator says, "Better think of yourself as dead already." Moss and her friends, the three dead astronauts, perish in every city. Not death in the human finite sense, but death in the vegetable-like state of suspension of life. They are not fully alive and not fully dead, and yet, when death does come, and it comes repeatedly without fail, it is never individual. Moss accumulates the other mosses she encounters and annihilates it in different versions of the city. Death is relational. Each time one of them dies, even from a great distance, the others experience the loss, and it strengthens the love and intimacy. To be with is to inhabit the border of life and death. When this clump of moss dies, it will then affect the lives of 150,000 protozoa, 132,000 tardigrades, 3,000 springtails, 800 rotifiers, 500 nematodes, 400 mites, and 200 fly larvae. Likewise, when a human dies, it affects the bacteria in their bodies, and with their perishing, they are severed not only the hyphae connecting them with their loved ones, but their worldview, their knowledge, products of lifelong encounters with human and non-human partners, all are lost. Now, think of that at the scale of an entire species. Drawing from the bios of moss, humans can learn to stay still, be small, reduce all motion to zero, trust the current, be tiny, be motionless. Survival is a communal affair. Thank you.